We're making this ring today from the client's amber brooch. She doesn't get much use out of the brooch, but she loves the amber. And so I'm going to make the ring. Here I've got a pair of pliers that I've modified in order to do this sort of work to remove the claw. And here's the amber that we're going to make the ring with. Just melted down some gold and I'm going to put it through the rollers, and I've squared it up, it's nice and even, and I'm going to cut off a piece to start making the band. Okay, so I've put it through the rollers and I've rolled it down to 2.5mm square, and now I'm putting some beeswax on it in order to make it easier to pull through, or easier to pull through, wire draw plate. This is a tungsten wire draw plate. As you can see, it's quite difficult to pull through, but I think you can manage the 2.5. Now I'm going to draw this down to 2.3mm round. You can see I'm struggling there. Any thicker, and I suspect you should use a draw bench, sorry. So now I'm just going to round the round wire, being gentle not to mark the round wire too much. You can see I'm using my thumb to push the wire around so that I'm not marking it with the jaws. Now I'm just taking the cylinder off because the finger size is too big. That cylinder I made in order to make bigger finger sizes, and I don't need it at this particular point. I've made two of them and soldered them together. I don't have any video footage of that, and that's me checking the finger size on it. And there's some square wire that I've rolled into flat plate, and those are the two bands that I put together. And now I'm measuring the length of the amber, and this is 1.5mm square wire that I'm going to make the frame with. Just cutting maybe 2/3 the way through, putting a square needle file across the wire, and then I'm going to fold it into a right angle. And I've got enough for, well, the length there is for the amber plus the join. Now I'm soldering this because I just want to stiffen it up, because I'm going to have to do some more filing and I want to make sure it doesn't bend out of shape. So I'll just solder this together. This I'm doing with some 9-carat hard solder. Because this is my first solder joint, I'm starting to use hard. And as I progress through the ring, I'll use medium and easy solder. Probably not the easy, but I'll definitely use the medium solder. Okay, so I've measured it and cut it, put a square needle file through it again. and bending to the right angle. And just checking to see the fit. Just got to pull it out a little bit. There you go. I'll do the same technique one more time. And here we have the frame all soldered up. So I'm just going to file it up roughly. Just file some flats on it. And I'll file the sides a little bit. Not too much, just to make sure there's nothing too, well, just to get it nice and straight. But not that much at all. I'm just going to clean the inside a little bit because I'm going to solder this on the plate, and I don't want any burrs on the inside because the burrs will create little pit holes that I want to avoid. Okay. It doesn't actually quite fit inside. I'm going to use a burr later on to do that. So I'm going to buff this up. Just starting out with a 400 grit. And I've just marked the centre of the plate. And I'm going to stamp the carat gold and my hallmark. There you go. Now I've sort of emered and polished the plate a wee bit, and I'm just putting some, that's why you see the green flame. I've got some boracic acid with methylated spirits, and it's meant to keep the polish a little bit. I don't think it works so well in this particular case, but it's what I'm used to doing, so I'm just going to... Okay, so I'm putting some little pillions or pallions or little square pieces of solder, and just soldered it. And what I'm doing, I'm trying to get the heat underneath the plate, which will flush the solder. That's why I'm lifting it up. And you can see the solder flushing all the way through. And also too, my solder joins from the top are coming out. You can see on the corners. But that's okay, I'll deal with that later. Now I've soldered that with medium solder. I'm just going to cut this off with tin snips. That plate I think was about 0.5 millimeters. So the tin snips will work quite fine on here without distorting the frame. And now I'm just going to file it. Just stopping before, just filing it up rough because I don't want to take it too far. Okay, so it still doesn't fit inside, but as I say, I'll take the inside out with a burr so I can make a tight fit. Now here at this point, right from the solder join, I'm just marking a centre line. So I know where the top is and I know where the bottom is. I always want the solder join to be directly below the top setting, so that if you have to resize it, It's the furthest point away from the top centing. Now I've marked that because, oops, having focusing problems here. I've marked that because I want to reduce the thickness of the band at those 2 points. As you can see, the solder joint is starting to break, which is okay. I'll just resolder it. But I want to take that, it's now 2.3 millimeters round, and I've tapped that down to, I think, about 1.5. And it's just maybe 1/3 of the band that I've tapped down. And I think I want to tap a little bit further up so I can make the taper look a little bit smoother. So I'm just marking the band so I know where to tap. Now I've got to put a bit of a curve on the band, and I'm just going to start the curve by putting it into these pliers. So there, I've just put a kink in it. And there you go, I've done it to both of them. And I've got some a swage block, and I'm just using mallet because I don't want to mark my punch. And I've just curved the... Now, I probably didn't show it there, but once you curve it, you just got to put it back on the mandrel and just tap it back around because it could go out of roundness. Now what I'm doing here, I'm filing it so that I create a flat in order to solder the two of these together. Okay, so I'm using some binding wire here. I'm just holding the two of them together with some binding wire. And I'll solder the back of that with some medium solder. Just flux it, of course. Now this is a 9-carat gold, and it can go black on you when you're soldering it, so you need to keep it all clean before you put the flux on, and that way you're guaranteed a decent solder joint. But that's, although it doesn't seem, it's a soft flame because I've got the hard solder joins there from, there it is, you can just barely see the solder joint coming out. Again, not a problem at this particular point. Okay, so that's where I'm going to put the plate. I've half round the edges of that plate at this particular point, and I've polished the back, and I've also polished in between the two rings because it's easier to do it now than after I put the plate on top. And I'm filing some, I've marked and filed some flat spots. Again, I'm taking the burrs out because the burrs, if you don't remove them, can cause a pitting problem when you solder it. Little pinholes along the solder joint, which you don't want. Okay, so just make sure it's flat. I've just put some binding wire around it to hold it together and fluxing it up. I'm using some medium solder here, and I'll solder on both sides. and I'll stick it in the acid and clean it up. And that's what I mean by it going black. So that's it from the acid. It's been sitting in the acid for half an hour, and there's the result. Okay, so I'm going to taper the back portion of the band a bit, just create some flat spots here with the flat file, of course, and I'm just using the right angle of that flat file in order to create the V's so that I can half round the back of the band. Here I'm hammering it up. And I'm happy with that. So I'm going to make some claws. This is 1mm round wire that I'm just creating a U shape. And this will hold the amber into the plate or the setting. Okay, so I'm going to mark where these claws are going to go, because I want to recess the claws into the frame. That'll be a stronger hold, because if I've just soldered the claws directly on top, that could snap off easily. So I'm just checking to see if where I've marked is correct. And I'm going to burr into the frame with a Fisher burr or a cylinder burr. And I'm going to go 3/4 of the way deep into the frame, because 1/4 of the round wire I'm going to file flat so that it has a better grip. So here you are. This is the lineup. I don't have any footage of me soldering the claws on. I don't know what's happened to it. I've lost it somehow. But it's come out of the acid. Now I'm just going to polish it up a little bit. I probably don't have to polish the underside at this point, but I'm doing it just in case there's any problems and I need to resolder something or something like that. So I'm just pre-polishing to make sure that there are no problems at this stage before I put the amber in. I'm also going to polish the top plate in order to create a better reflection for the amber. It'll make the amber look brighter. I'm just burring the inside edges to make it a snug fit, and I'm also going to file 1/4, like I said earlier, 1/4 of the round wire to create a flat spot, so we've got more connection with the amber. Okay, just brush it all away, get all the filings out, just check the fit, see how it goes. I think I can still burr a little bit from the inside out. I'm using a conical burr there. I think that's better. Okay, so I've pushed one side down. Now I'm just going to push another side. That's a pusher with a V groove in it, so that I don't, 1, slip off, and 2, I don't mark the round wire too much. And there we have it. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Subscribe if you feel like it, and that notification bell if you want to be notified when the next one comes up.